the stage. It's a reoccurring theme for me. I have had the opportunity to share my story as someone who has aged out of the foster care system on so many different stages. And the amazing thing is, with the stage, it is a place that I use to speak out about the rights of young people all over the US. But it's also a place where I hid from all the things that were going on inside of me. And I resisted God, who was trying to heal me from all the brokenness. It was the stage that I ran from myself and put on a front for audiences. I told the truth about my story, but then I would go home and I wouldn't truly face the brokenness and the hurt that still existed within me. And I realized that God was fighting for me. And not only was he fighting for me, but he was fighting for all of us to come to terms with the brokenness that we all experience. Whether or not you aged out of the foster care system, or you just had some difficult childhood, or you had a great childhood, God is fighting to come to terms and to allow you to come to terms with the brokenness that you've experienced. So imagine a father who chose to sacrifice himself for people. But not tragically, it wasn't sad to see, because this father sacrificed his son for all humanity. And ever since Adam and Eve ate from that tree, God came up with the plan to redeem his seed back from sin to he who took it all into consideration. Every individual, every family, every nation. He looked on with compassion, and though we see him in passing, but we don't see him and we keep passing. Crying, lying, buying the lie, dying, trying to do it ourselves when there is a God who did it himself. He carefully counted the cost, what would be lost, what would be gained, the hurt, the pain, the victory, the change. He considered it all. What was at stake? The fact that some just wouldn't believe, that some just wouldn't receive. Regardless of what it took to retrieve the lost and reconcile the broken, the truth of the matter is, though many heard what was spoken, some would still choose to walk away broken. And some would still choose to walk away choking. So as a token of his love for us, he sent his son for us so that we could clearly see that he would give up anything for us. You see, the Son was the Word wrapped in flesh. And since in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, yes, God gave up his best, himself wrapped in flesh, sacrificed to express the very depth of his love for his beloved, shoved into the very face of death, steps taken toward the very cross that would take him. But he wasn't shaken. He knew what he had to do, knew exactly what he had to prove. A father's love, crowns of thorns worn by the Messiah, sworn to be born into a world that would conspire to slay him, betray him, lay him in a tomb. Now he's seated at the right hand of the Father, doing the Father's business. Word wrapped in flesh. God didn't hold anything back from his blessed, beloved. For God so loved the world that he gave, so that we could have an opportunity to embrace a king, taste true life, took us out of the equation. To alleviate any possible abrasion, he swore by himself, since he looked around and no greater could be found than he that was and is to come, came to earth as his son, for the Son and the Father are one, to save us. No one has ever gave us a gift so amazing, but an opportunity to be redeemed from our brokenness and see beauty even in places of ashes. I love these opportunities. I love being on stages. I like talking to people. I like sharing my story. Every opportunity I get, I take it as a blessing to share. Now, I know and I understand that a lot of people don't like public speaking. How many people don't like public speaking? Okay, let me tell you. How many people like public speaking? Okay, oh my goodness. That is very rare that it's like half and half. Most people do not like public speaking. As a matter of fact, it is a fear. Like one of the top fears that people have is being on stages. But for me, I have always liked the stage. I mean, it's just an energy, and it's just amazing to be able to talk to so many different people at one time. That doesn't mean I don't get nervous. Every single time I come on stage, I can feel the tremble coming up my leg, and I can feel myself getting nervous. But the excitement of it is what drives me to keep getting on stage and sharing whenever I have that opportunity. As a matter of fact, when I was younger, I would actually take my glasses off so that I couldn't see the audience at all. I just saw like a big blob of colors. And don't worry, tonight I have on contacts so I can actually see people. But for so long, I would do that because I wanted to speak, but I didn't want to see people. I didn't want to see the reactions of people, but I loved the energy of the moment. So much so that even when I was younger, before I entered into foster care, my biological family would have these cookouts. And I would come into the living room, I would prance in, I was probably like 5 or 6. I would prance in the front of the room and I would just say, I'm fine, I know I'm fine. I was pretty vain as a child. But that would give me attention. And then everybody would say, oh, and I'd just stand there and just take it all in because of the energy of the moment, all the greatness in the room. I loved it. And it's so interesting that even now the stage, it fascinates me. Because the stage is actually a place of total vulnerability and no vulnerability. It is amazing for so many young people who have advocated for foster care or spoken out, used their voice to share their issues and what went on in their life and how things can be better. That experience can be so liberating. But it can also be very, very painful. So with that dichotomy of the pain and the liberation, I personally found a lot of liberation in being able to share my story. I remember the first time that I had an opportunity to advocate for another young person who was in foster care. I personally do not remember this story, but one of the foster parent trainers in Georgia, where I'm from, tells the story all the time about how apparently, allegedly, I was the kid who would come to my little sister, my adopted sister's family team meetings with a checklist. And I would say to the people there, did you call her mother this week? Oh, you didn't call her mother, okay. Well, did you make sure she had her shots? Oh, you did, okay. And I was just literally keeping these people in check on what they were supposed to be doing for my little sister. And even though I don't specifically remember that moment, I believe her, I believe it happened, I just don't remember. I remember being so energized by the opportunities to advocate for other young people. And so, as I mentioned, I'm from Georgia. I'm originally from Memphis, and I was in foster care in Georgia. And I remember getting involved right out of high school in the groups that were advocating for young people. There was this one specific group called Georgia Empowerment. Georgia Empowerment is an advocacy group, and their slogan is nothing about us without us. And so that just made me really excited. And so I had aged out of foster care and I wanted to still give back. I wanted to speak. I was like, sign me up for every foster parent panel, for every discussion, for every caseworker summit. I have things to say and I have tips. I got tips on how they can do things right. And I was ready. I was just ready to speak. I was ready to share poetry. I was ready to just help people move forward. And so Georgia Empowerment was one way that I was able to do that. I was also involved with the Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative, which is a national, amazing initiative that takes young people who have aged out of foster care and helps to teach them leadership skills. And so I got involved with that. I was able to travel all over the country speaking and advocating for young people in foster care. And it was absolutely liberating and amazing. But what I realized as I was speaking on stages, every stage I spoke on, I left a piece of myself there. And I couldn't get it back. And now this wasn't sad. It was actually a part of my process of coming to terms with the trauma that I had experienced as a child. The trauma of being born into a family that couldn't support me in the way that they wanted to. The tragedy of experiencing the death of my little brother. And even now, still walking through the experiences of losing both my biological mother and my biological father. It is difficult. And all of those pieces were scattered. But when I got on a stage, I could speak out and I could say things, but I did not address the depth of the hurt that existed inside of me. And I know so many young people who have gone out and advocated, they've experienced foster care, and they would get on stages and they would speak, and then they would leave those stages and they would leave those platforms, and they wouldn't be able to pay their rent. They wouldn't be able to afford their car insurance. They wouldn't be able to have access to the mental health services that they really need. There was so much depth of brokenness there that the stage cannot heal alone. And so moving forward and out of that place, I moved into my professional life and I worked for foster care organizations. I worked for some amazing organizations in Georgia. I worked for this organization called Families First. I worked for an amazing organization that's here tonight, Faith Bridge Foster Care, based in Alpharetta, Georgia. I worked for the state of Georgia. I worked for and volunteered for organizations all over that served foster youth, because that's where I knew how to give impact. That's what I felt like. I could pour myself out in this area. I can make an impact in this area. So I kept coming back to it. And the interesting thing was I got burnt out to the point where I could not find my peace because all of my pieces were scattered. And it brought me to a place of realizing that until I come to terms with the depth of the hurt and the brokenness that I experienced, I couldn't move forward. So what did I decide to do? I decided to leave foster care altogether. I didn't want to work for foster care. I didn't want to talk to foster parents. I was done. I was like, sign me up. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I went to grad school. I got my MBA, and I decided I'm leaving. I was like, I'm about to go corporate America on everybody, I was just ready to go, whatever route could take me out of this. And so I had to do that for myself. I had to separate myself from foster care for a while because what I realized is that in me being involved in the way that I was, even though I was creating major impact, I was running from healing. And I was running from God's love and presence and God trying to tell me and speak to me about myself. I was just running as far away as I could. And so I graduated from grad school. I left my great job at Faith Bridge. I said deuces to America, and I moved to India for 10 months. and I worked in India at an organization that didn't do foster care. And it was an amazing experience. And I needed that for myself. I needed that. I needed to know that I could live and exist out of the context. I needed to see myself out of that context. And that's where my healing came. It was very difficult because I had built my whole professional life. Everything was in alignment with foster care. My resume was all foster care. And I didn't know if I had done that because I was passionate about it or if I had done that because that's the only thing that I could do. And so I needed to prove to myself that foster care was actually a passion of mine. That seeing young people reach wholeness was a passion of mine. That seeing young people come to terms with their identity. I knew that young people were a passion, but I wanted to make sure that that's the lane that I wanted to be in. So I just got back from India last year, and it's funny because now, I was like, corporate America, here I come. And God was like, reel you back in. And I found this, I'm a part of a fellowship now called Foster America. Foster America is a fellowship that actually takes individuals who have training outside of child welfare and places them within organizations to be leaders and change makers within the child welfare system. And I was like, that is the answer. Like, that's in my place right now. That's what I needed. That's what I see being a major part of the impact. And so, as a fellow now, I work with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services on the Family First Prevention Services Act. Has anyone heard of the Family First Prevention Services Act? A couple people out there. An amazing landmark piece of legislation that is working on providing prevention services and reducing the number of young people that are in residential facilities, and I'm a part of that. And I'm so blessed to be a part of that. And I'm so blessed to see God come help me to gather all the pieces and see the fullness of what I'm called to do and why I'm placed here. It's about us allowing God to come in and intervene and gather those pieces. There's a scripture in Deuteronomy 33:4 that says, in the Message translation, that says, God, your God, will restore everything you lost. He'll have compassion on you. He'll come back and pick up the pieces from all the places where you were scattered. No matter how far away you are, God, your God, will get you out of there. And I am so committed to allowing God to walk me through this place of healing. So I don't know where you're scattered. I don't know if you've scattered yourself in volunteer services at your church. I don't know if you've scattered yourself and spread yourself thin doing sports or whatever it is. Wherever you have scattered yourself, allow God to bring wholeness and bring those pieces together, because that's the only way that we can come to terms with the identity and the call that He's placed on our lives. So wake up to your true identity. Wake up. I'm screaming to myself, wake up. Decide which identity to take up, fake. Cover the truth. Make up a reason to break up with reality. Caged. Take a number. Get in line to join the slumber. Free passes. Stumble around to you. Fumble around and your life passes. Time is waiting on no one. How long to avoid seeing what has been in you this whole time? A sleeping giant, defiantly avoiding reality. So busy trying to keep your invisible shine up, I can't identify me in a lineup. I left half of me on the bathroom sink, the other half blotched out in pink, imitating what I think you think is my time up. It's a crime, DUI or DUFI, driving under false identity. It's me driving me with low visibility, driving fast, gas crash into reality. This is no longer a dream. Things in the mirror are not as close as they seem. They say, God forbid you wake. The earth is waiting for sons to wake. The earth is shaking. Can you feel the quake? Identity crisis, Christ lookalikes parading around like mere men. Invisible shackles of mere sin and brokenness. Wake up. Those chains can't really hold you in. Wake up. You are stronger than they told you then. You are the giant. Defy and win. Remove the mask. He asked, I'm in. Never again returning to imitations and sin. My beauty erupts from within and floods every room I step in. Now I step in to everything that I'm created to be. I am sufficient. God signed off on me. I scream, wake to all this genius in me. The world waits for all this brilliance from we. Now we see and we refuse to take the back seat to some fake version of me. So the revolution will not be televised. Sorry, I can't hide from the extravagance of the true me. I am handcrafted, majestically and intentionally. You can call me your majesty, because I'm practically royalty. My daddy's royal, see, and it shows. Oh, you don't see? That's because your eyes are closed. Now you wake up and see your true identity so together we can rise from the brokenness and defy gravity. Thank you.